I knew it was going to work, only because I couldn't, there was no way it could fail. I'm not even sure now. 53 cities and towns out here who create waste every day, and it has to go somewhere. And it wasn't going to go into the harbor because I could do something about that. And then I knew that see, the Clean Water Act is very thorough. It's very specific. It tells you what you can do all the way from issuing permits and waivers, which started this case in the beginning, you see, to things like secondary treatment. It had to be cited. Deer Island had been established as a waste treatment center for decades. First decision, it's going to Deer Island. Second decision, what are you going to do with the plant out there? All right. Another hearing. What do we do with it? There's a jail out there. What do we do with it? So we had engineers come in. Some engineers said to me, I can build the new plant, a new plant, right where it is without touching the jail. And he's probably right, he could put a skyscraper on a dime. But he was clearly unaware of what environmental consequences would come from his rushing through this, you see. And so I ultimately relied on, again, the safe and more certain, I guess I should say, approach. And I finally said, again, the best course of action is to move the jail.
Yeah.
Move it. We didn't own the land, so we couldn't build the site. That required a act of the legislature. And of course, they refused to transfer the land. So I could not order them to transfer the land. I couldn't hold the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the governor in contempt. So I did the next best thing. Not the next best thing, it was the worst thing I could have done. But I did it, and that is to issue a moratorium over which I did have control. I said, it just essentially was, look, if we can't have that site, we can't make more sewage. The way we don't make any more sewage is not to give anybody any building permits. Giving people building permits means more sewage. We can't take more sewage unless you give us the site. So no more building in Boston. Nobody gets a permit in Boston.
The effect was very immediately, anyone who wanted a building permit or who wanted an occupancy permit for a building that was already completed in the 43 communities in the MWRA district could not proceed. So you had lenders, real estate developers, insurance companies, prospective tenants, all very upset at a time when the Massachusetts economy wasn't doing so well, where the governor was pursuing a pro-economic growth policy, ostensibly. And here he was, he took the single most effective action at stopping economic growth for several weeks until he finally filed the bill, which passed immediately, of course.
And so the land was transferred?
And then the land was transferred.
Having a federal court in charge with the ability of doing things as draconian as sewer hookup bans that would have essentially shut down development in the city of Boston and all of eastern Massachusetts for that matter, was helped to clarify the mind in the legislative process, I think. And so I'm certain that that had an ongoing and significant impact on the way the legislature chose to engage and take this very seriously and figure out ways to help the project proceed.
I think he had a very good sense of what a court should do and can do and what it shouldn't do and can't do. And that's the role and the position he took. Better we do the job and do it well, but if there were particular situations where for some reason the system didn't seem to be working as well as it should, he was there to step in and just, in most cases, gently but firmly, give us all a good swift kick in the behind and keep us moving. And that was the role he played. It was the right one. It was the right one.
I think this is a great democracy. The system should work. The system looks like it did not work in this case. Paul Garrity was not allowed to be effective because the system wouldn't support him. They supported me because I made them do it. So that's a lesson. It harkens back, as I said, to the necessity for a strong, independent judiciary. And again, I don't have a constituency. I'm not hired. I'm appointed. And I think that everybody does their work. The legislature's job is to pass laws, you see. Executive's job is to enforce and execute, prepare, administer. And the judicial function should never be heard of. You know, I don't mind handling a backyard dispute, but I should not be involved between the legislature and the executive until the time comes when they do not either pass the law or pass a bad law or a law which has not passed constitutional muster, or the executive enforces or executes the law which is incompatible with the Constitution. Now, suddenly, there's somebody else out there. Remember what I said, checks and balances? Somebody else out there with equal power to use it. That's a lesson. That is the lesson. Now, that sounds like fifth grade civics. But that is. I mean, you've got to be impressed, if you're me, with how the system wasn't working. It was not functioning. But ultimately, you know what? It did.